many years ago was a very sweet little old lady who I was speaking to, and she, had listened to one of the talks on the Buddha's saying that what has to be laid down is the attachment to I. That's the fundamental attachment, the attachment to myself, the glorying of myself above everything else. And she said to me, she said, of course, it all makes perfect sense. It really, really does in the teachings of the Buddha. But she says, my problem is that I don't really have much of a sense of self. I have very low self-esteem. I always feel that I can't. I lack confidence, all this sort of thing. And so after she'd finished, I said, well, who is it? She said, oh yes, what I really need to do is to build myself up, build up my sense of self, and then I can, become non-attached to it. Then I can lay it down, or then it can be laid down. And I said, but who is it that tells you that you have no confidence? Who is it that insists it's all too much, and that you cannot, and that it's you will feel overwhelmed, and that you should be frightened of this? Who is it that tells you all that? That's the self. That's the self-belief, or raft of self-beliefs that must be laid down. And she looked at me, and suddenly that sweet little old lady vanished, and in its place there was something very cold and very steely, and it said, but I am rubbish. And there was a real strength in those words. But of course what I'd done is I had crossed that self-belief, and when you cross that self-belief, it hurts me existentially. It feels like a little death. This is why when if you've ever been in the company of a group of people, perhaps who you don't really know very well, and they start talking about something, I don't know, politics or a cause or some sort of, whatever the sort of opinion of the day is about something, and you don't hold that opinion. You hold an opinion that's diametrically the opposite. Isn't there a feeling that of discomfort and awkwardness that arises? And if we examine what that awkwardness actually is, that somehow it feels personal. It feels that if I say something, I might be attacked or whatever, and that the urge comes up that actually I should say something, and that now I really need to defend my position, defend my position, and up go the walls, and we roll out all the big guns, and now we're getting ourselves all primed and ready for a big showdown with those people who now I need to put them straight about what is what, and so forth. And this is because these opinions of mine are me. This is how it feels emotionally. This is how the passions, or the fires as they're known in Buddhism, reinforce and uphold this sense of myself and I and mine. Now, of course, we might turn around and say, but, my opinions are good, and therefore the benefit of humanity, and, people have to fight for, justice and so forth. Okay. But there's a difference between upholding the good and upholding the true, which Buddhism obviously also recognizes as well, and then doing it for my own sake. Doing it because I feel threatened, not because it's the right thing to do, not because it's the good, but because actually what's hiding behind it is me. And I remember the late Trevor Leggett telling a story about the samurai whose liege lord had been murdered, and the actual samurai themselves, the soldiers, the aristocratic soldiers themselves, decided to go out and track down the murderer and bring him to justice. And one of them finally hunted him down to a cave in a forest, and he rushed into the cave, and there he was, and the murderer, the samurai drew his sword as to cut off his head, and the murderer turned and spat fully in the face of the samurai, and the samurai smarted at that. stepped back, sheathed his sword, turned round and walked away. And the question was, why? Why did he do that? He did that because now the murderer had managed to anger him. And if he killed the murderer, it would have been because he had been personally insulted, not because he was bringing the man to justice for the murder of the liege lord. So just an example of how we have two things there. There is the good, and then there is my good as well. And it's the latter one. And my goodness, this is how the passions can even take the good and turn it in the road to hell. Turn it into the road to hell. Don't we say the road to hell is paved with the best of intentions? Because once they become carried away by the passions, which are all about me and what I think should be, and then must be, and then cannot be tolerated, the opposite, then suddenly there's the finger on the nuclear button. And then we're all in danger. So this is why the Buddha was very clear about this suffering, this dukkha, being closely connected with this self, this which he called a delusion. And it is a delusion because it isn't actually a separate self, a separate entity. It doesn't exist. It's an appearance. Again, as my late teacher, Venerable Myokyo-ni, used to say, when she said, we talk about my thoughts, but actually, if we really look at it, it's not that I have those thoughts. It's not even quite that those thoughts have me, although that's closer to it. She said, what it is, she said, I am those thoughts. Those thoughts create the appearance of me and you, and right and wrong, and higher and lower, and black and white, and all those opposites that were really explored very thoroughly in the particularly in Chinese Buddhism. But those opposites, of course, those opposites, those extremes, if you like, produce the Buddha's teaching of the middle way, because the teaching of the middle way in Mahayana is not just the sort of classic story of the middle road between the extremes of overindulgence or sensuous pleasure and privation and very overly strict asceticism, which is how the Buddha originally taught them on a number of occasions, but also actually refers to non-attachment itself, that the middle way is the way of non-attachment, and that the letting go of the extremes also means the letting go of the fundamental extreme, or extremes of I and other. And once the thought of I and other has been fully laid down, then the middle way is attained, because that's the way of non-attachment. And this is reflected in the famous koan, in fact, by the sixth patriarch, Eino Daiken, when he said, before thinking of good and bad, what is the true face? Before father and mother were born. Before thinking of good and bad. Good and bad, of course, is just a pair of opposites. Could be high or low, you and me. It doesn't matter. It's just a pair of opposites. Before the world has been split, before thinking has split the world into pairs of opposites, what is there in that moment?